Of the vast arrays of topics to choose from for my AFISU, from rocket science to dance functions, I decided to go with something different. I chose monetary policy. But before we begin, let's find out what monetary policy is and how it's relevant to sinusoidal functions. Monetary policy can be practiced when a nation's central bank manipulates the Fed fund rates to increase or decrease the country's current unemployment rate and inflation. Now let's get into the history. Between the years 1879 and 1914, the US kept an international gold standard, meaning gold was their currency. In 1914, the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, was established to ease financial burden on the government. Finally, in 1934, gold was replaced with banknotes to reduce the government's welfare debt. Today, monetary policy is practiced by central banks worldwide to monitor a country's economical state. This is how monetary policy affects the unemployment rate and inflation with the Fed fund rates. When the Fed fund rates are increased, the unemployment rate increases while the inflation decreases. When the Fed fund rates are reduced, the unemployment rate declines while the inflation rises. Now let's get into the experiment. My experiment will be about comparing the unemployment rate and inflation of a simulation called Chair the Fed and America's actual numbers. On Chair the Fed, I will be using America's actual Fed fund rates. The main goal of my experiment is to compare the unemployment rate and inflation of America's Fed fund rates in the simulation and in real life. My hypothesis was that the effects of the simulation will be the same as in real life. To complete the experiment, three main tools were used. First, the Trading Economics website was used to obtain the US Fed fund rates. Next, Chair the Fed was used to simulate the rates. Finally, Desmos is used to compare the results between the simulation and the reality. Monetary policy helps with society and societal needs in two main ways. The central bank can ensure a low unemployment rate so that people who need jobs don't lose them. Next, the central bank can ensure that prices remain at a reasonable rate so that people can afford their basic necessities. As for the environment, monetary policy can reduce the budget of non-eco-friendly companies, reducing the harm they do. However, this is not very effective as it is temporary and will affect the entire economy. Finally, technology can help predict economical states in the future, which will help central banks to decide the Fed fund rate.
Created using Powtoon.